Okay, so this is our display screen that's in the cab of the tractor. So when you first receive this display, you will want to, there'll be a ram mount on the back side that you can attach to inside your cab. So just to remember to get that all done before you start wrapping. Don't leave this screen loose in the cab. So this is how she'll fire up. It'll load up like this, showing the manual screen. So we've got 3 different buttons. We have our mode button, we have our home button, and the escape button. So if there's an error on the machine or whatever, you can hit escape because you'll get a caution shows up on the center of the screen. So first of all, what you want to do is when you get your machine, you want to go into the mode and you want to go to your setup page. And the first thing you want to do in the setup page is hold the mode button down for about 7 seconds, and it'll come into a parameter page. And this is where there's a couple settings that are important to take note of. The first one, wrap width, is 26 inches. That is after it goes through the pre-stretcher, we're at about 26 inches. So you don't want to change that. You want to leave that the way it is. And all you do is you just take this dial and you rotate it to the next spot. So the next one is pulses per 10 revolutions on the rollers. That is something you don't want to change. That is something that we preset at the factory, but just leave that the way it is. Don't move it. It needs to be 782. The next one is roller diameter. Again, something you don't change. You just leave that. If it does get changed, you can just set it back to 10. The next one is bail in switch. That one there is you can enable it or disable it. The reason for that would be is if you want to disable it is if you're in a yard and you're wrapping with the remote, you might want to disable that and not use the trigger switch. So all you do is you just push in on the button. It turns green, and you can either enable or disable. And once you do that, you just hit it again, and now it sets it. The film delay, that one there you would set on. That's probably something you won't change a lot, but there is times if you're doing a larger bale or a smaller bale, depending which size of bale you're doing. It's when the cut and holds release after it starts wrapping. So if you find that the hoop's rotating too many times before the cut and holds release the film that's pinched in it, so you could decrease or increase that. Actual previous bales, that's stuff you don't need to look at. 50% overlap, you don't change that. Hoop speed override. The only time you would want to change that is if you wreck the hoop speed sensor. Say something happened and you damaged it. What'll happen is the hoop will run at full speed because there's no information coming back to the computer. So what you want to do on there is, probably decrease that to 50% and try it and see how it's playing out. So definitely something you want to check if you do wreck your hoop speed sensor. Pulses per hoop revolution, again, that would be something you don't change. It's just a default at 206. Last one on this screen here is rear roller raise degrees. So if you're getting into larger bales, you're getting closer to the 5'5" bale, you might want to change that. And the only reason is that changes the angle of the rear roller. So it opens up the 2 rollers a little further so the bale sits down in further. And there's definitely a limit to how far you can go, but it would lower the height of the bale and would give it a chance. So what you'll find is if the wrap goes over top of the cut and holds and the cut and holds retract and the wrap isn't pinched in there, it's actually missing the cut and holds, you might want to actually lower that bale down a tad. And then you just go to the second page. As you can see, we have 1 of 2. So the second page is just another parameter page, and on there it's a tongue enable, disable. We have a sensor on our tongue that if by chance your lift arm is up and you rotate into transport mode, so you bring the tongue in line with the machine, and you try lowering your arm, if that's enabled, it will lock out the lift arm, so it won't allow that tongue to come down, or the lift arm to come down. So you might want, so it depends. If you're somebody that pays close attention to it, you might want to disable that and just rely on that. But that's definitely what it is. You can just highlight over top and enable, disable. And yeah, so basically what that does is if you're in the field and you're ready to leave and you want to swing the machine in so it's in behind the tractor, if the lift arm is down and it starts and the tongue starts swinging in, it's going to lock out. We have a solenoid on the cylinder, and it's going to lock out. And so what you need to do is hit escape, and then close your finger, lift your arm up to 40 degrees, and then swing your tongue in. And that it's just a safeguard. It's a anti-crash tongue sensor. So just something to remember. The next thing we've got is a pause sequence. So film wrap in auto wrap. Sorry, film brake in auto wrap. So what that does is if you're in the field and you're wrapping and one of your tensioners, the film breaks, what'll happen in this setup here, it's a pause sequence. So what'll happen is the machine will stop, and there'll be a thing that pops up on your screen saying film break. At that point, you can either hit escape and hit start, and it'll just remember that you've got a film broke, and it'll transition into just having one or two rolls on there, depending what you have on your tensioners. If you have twin wrap or if you don't, it'll automatically change for you, and the speed of the rotation of the rollers changes because you've only got either one or two rolls of film on there versus 3 or 4. So what'll happen there is it'll pause, and it gives you a chance just to say, okay, I gotta either go out and tie my film off, or put a new roll on, or just continue, and when you continue, it'll just finish up on the tensioner that still has film on it. The other option you have is, if you scroll through here, it's auto adjust. So if you have that selected, it automatically just continues to go. It shows up on your screen saying film break, but it will continue to run, and it'll automatically change the settings so your roller rotates at a slower speed and your hoop stays running at the same speed. So it's just a personal preference depending on what you want to do. The next one is twin wrap, yes or no. So if you bought this machine and you don't have twin wrap on, twin wrap meaning you got 2 rolls on each tensioner. If you don't, or if you decide that you've only got a couple bales left to wrap and you actually want to just wrap a couple, and you're just going to run with 2 rolls of film, 1 on each tensioner, at that point you would change this to no. Do you have twin wrap? No. If you do, then you would want to select yes. And really what that setting there does, it's a piece of communication for the computer to know if you've actually got 2 rolls of film on there or 4, and so it's all coming back to the film break side of things, knowing how much film is actually getting put on the bale itself. And then just to get out of that screen, you can just go to home, and it pops up into there again. So, and then after you've got all that set on the parameter page, you want to go to your setup page, and here again, this is where you select 2 rolls of film or 4. You still have to do it on the parameter page just because of the overlap. You need to make sure you check both of those. So go to the parameter page, change the rolls of film, the number of rolls. Do you have twin wrap or don't you? If you do, then here you would put 4. So your selection is either 4 or 2. Targeted wrap layers. Here's just where you put in, you want 4 layers on. If you have 2, your options are in 2 increments. So it'll be 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. That's kind of how it goes up with 2 rolls of film. But if you have 4, it goes up in increments of 4. So it'd be 4, 8, 12, 16. So whatever your desire is, if you're doing 6 or 8 layers. Film sensor, if you decide that you don't want to run with the film sensors on, you can just disable that and it'll automatically just ignore if you run out of film. The next one is automatic bail unload. So if you've got that disabled, it won't automatically unload the bail. So what will happen is after the bail is done wrapping, it stays in the chamber and it waits for your command on the auto screen to unload bail. But if you have that automatically, once the bail is done wrapping, it'll automatically tip off the back. So if you're in hilly country, or if you're in a spot where you want to bring your bales to a certain position or a certain area in the field to dump them off, then you would make sure that you've got that set right. So automatically it'll wait for you to dump it. Next thing is your diameter. What's your bale diameter? It's not the width of the bale, it's the diameter of the bale. So if you're running a 54-inch bale or 48, this is where you put that in there. You go out there with a tape measure, measure up your bale, get a bit of an average, and just put that dimension in there. 10 degrees. So what happens with that there, if you want to increase or decrease that, I think probably minimum is 10 where you want to run it. But what will happen is when your first bale goes into the chamber and starts wrapping, you can go grab your second bale. And when you grab your second bale and it hits the trigger switch, the finger will close and it'll lift up to those degrees, or to that degrees. So if you got 10 or 15 in there, it'll lift up. One thing to remember is you want to have that at a certain point where you're lifting high enough that you're not your bale isn't hitting the top of the stubble of your hay field or straw. You want to make sure it's lifting up high enough so it doesn't tear the net wrap on your actual bale. Bale count, you're just adjusting that. You can either if you've got a couple extra bales that you had done and it didn't count it, you can add them to it just as a reminder. Or if you've done a couple in manual, you can change that wherever you need. Or if you're going into the field and you start with 0, you can just decrease it to 0. Wrap cleanup time on that one there. It is after the bale is done wrapping and before it gets tipped off the back. If you have that set at 8 seconds, what will automatically happen is your bale will rotate after the cutting holes have come out, cut the plastic, and the bale's just sitting in the chamber. It's going to rotate for how many seconds you have on there. And what it does is it just packs the seams down on the bale, and it just kind of packs everything. If you have a loose piece that came off from the cutting hold, it'll kind of pack that down. And so when you tip the bale off, there's not loose ends sitting on the bale itself that has just been wrapped. Here's a machine status, or machine, it kind of gives you the layout of what our ECU version is and the display, and it'll give us a lifetime bale count. Up on the top here we have machine status. In there, it gives you a lot of information. So if you're in a field and you find yourself, the machine is just sitting there and it's not doing anything, this will really give you a good idea of what is happening. So it'll tell you left door, right door. Yeah, they're both closed. Your film sensor is okay. Your left cut and hold switch it's closed. Same with your right cut and hold switch, it's closed. And these are your degrees of your sensors on your lift arm, your rear roller, your finger angle, and your tongue angle. The tongue is probably not something that you'll be looking at because that is something that's just in the crash piece of when you're actually going to transport mode. So that's really, the feedback on that is not as critical, but these others are very critical. You need to look at that and say, and so what'll happen is right now, because of these angles, it's telling me my lift arm is down, my rear roller position is adjusted, my finger position is open, and my tongue is out, and my hoop is home. Very important, hoop is home. If this hoop isn't at home, pretty much nothing works. It's really, really critical to make sure your hoop is at home. If you had a remote, it would say active if you have got the remote turned on. Diagnostic page. We've got 2 pages again, as you can see. We have 1 of 2. This here page will, if you're running into an issue where you want to kind of bypass some of the safeties, there's definitely still some lockouts that happen on this page, but you really can run this machine by just, as soon as you push a button and let go, it stops the function. So it's really, really nice if you're trying to, like say you got a bale in there and it's jammed up and you're just trying to get this thing out the back. This is the page I would go to, and this gives you individual operations, and it's very, very nice to operate from. And it does give you, so if you had a bad wire going to your manifold, if there was a break in the wire, a lot of this, like now we're showing lift arm, we have SV20A, it's saying okay. That means we've got, it's plugged in, it's communicating. If I actually went over to the valve and unplugged it, it would show open there. So it's very nice, gives you great feedback. And so we do have, so again, individual operations, finger open, lift arm up, rear roller up, cut and hold open, finger close, lift arm down, rear roller down, cut and hold close. You can, and so we have a second page again to this. And there you have hoop home, hoop rotate slow, and roller rotate. Just go back to the home page. So this is our manual screen. When it's showing manual up here, it's automatically, that's what we have, is we're in manual. So you close your finger. If you push this button, the finger will close. And once it's fully closed, this will change to open. And lift arm up, because we have 2 buttons for it. You can manually run up and down separately. In the way of, if you push this and it's not going to do a full cycle, it'll only, as you're pushing the button, it'll operate. So as soon as you let go, the lift arm stops because you have lift arm down. Hoop rotate. If you want to rotate that hoop, you got to hold the button down and it'll automatically rotate, and as soon as you let go, it stops. Roller rotate, same thing, just push the button and rotate it to the point where you are ready to do the next step. Cut and hold extend, as soon as you push that button, it'll extend fully, and then this will change to cut and hold, cycle, retract, and then you push it and you can retract it. Rear roller down, again the same thing, you hit that rear roller is going to rotate down all the way, and it'll wait for you to say rear roller up, and it changes its displayed up, and you just hit the button up. When you go to auto screen, you hit mode, and in this page here, this is now you're in automatic. So if you're loading wrap, you could just hold this button down and watch the hoop rotate into position so you can load the wrap from the left door. Hoop home. To run any of these functions, like a lift arm up, you'd want to close your finger, and you'd be like, if you start lifting up the arm and the hoop isn't home, it's gonna give you a big caution here and say hoop not home. At that point you hit escape and you put your lift arm back down and you make sure the hoop gets rotated to home before you start. So on this screen here we have bail unload. So right now, if you remember on the setup screen, I had, and I can go back to that in a second here, but right now we have bail unload. So manually, once your bail is finished wrapping, you would hit this button and the bail would kick off the back. Otherwise it's waiting for you to do that command. Rear roller up, if you needed to readjust a little bit, you could go up or down. But at this point, if it's sitting like this and you hit a bail on the trigger switch, it's just going to sit there and not do anything, because what you need to do is you need to hit wrap enable. So as soon as you do that, now it changes to cycle start. So as soon as you drive into a bail, the automatic cycle will start, the finger will close, and the lift arm will lift the bail into the chamber and start wrapping, and the lift arm comes down and waits for your next bail. So now if I go back to the setup page and change this to enable, that's the automatic bail unload. Go back to my home page, go to auto screen. Now you can see that our bail unload is automatic. So what that means is when it's done wrapping, it's going to kick the bail off automatically and you don't have to touch this button. But if you have it on the setup page as disabled or enabled, so if you go back to your setup page and you have this disabled, this is asking for you to bail unload after you're done your cycle. So again, any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Tubeline at the office or www.tubeline.ca.